Welcome to Michelle's Making. Are you ready for coffee, crafts, cooking, and cocktails? Let's get going.
Welcome, and welcome back to those of you who are returning. I really do appreciate it. Today is regifting day, so if you've got something you've received in the past that you don't have a need for, it might be a great time to regift it. It's also eggnog day, so maybe we'll have some adult eggnog here a little later. But we're going to make it a great one. I've already had my coffee. I had 2 cups this morning, so I don't need any more. But we're going to make it a great one. We're going to get going. But before we do, I want to give a shout out to my dear friend Connie, who celebrates her birthday on Christmas Day with baby Jesus. So we don't ever forget you, Connie. It's a special day just because we were gifted with you. But let's make it a great one and get going.
We're starting with a cookie decorating party. I made some delicious gingerbread men cookies and some sugar cookies. Both of the recipes will be linked in the description box. The thing I liked best about both of these recipes is they make soft cookies that are firm enough to ice, if that makes sense. They're not a hard, crisp cookie, they're a soft cookie. And as long as you store them in an airtight container, they can be made up a couple of days in advance like I did. And then the day of our cookie decorating party, I only had to make the icing. But the gingerbread cookies, they do need to refrigerate, preferably overnight. So I made the cookie dough one day, put it in the fridge, and did the baking the next day. And for the decorator icing, I used the recipe that is included in that gingerbread recipe, and I followed it to a T, and it was perfect. It's been a very, very long time since I've done decorator icing, and I wasn't quite sure. I was afraid I might have to experiment around with it before getting it right. But it actually was the perfect recipe. So I definitely recommend using that recipe, especially if you've never done it before, so you'll have success. Now I did cut all of the gingerbread cookies into the shape of the gingerbread man, but I also found a reference for doing a reindeer where you use the gingerbread man, but you turn him upside down, and you'll see that a little later at our party where a couple of them were decorated that way, and they turned out really cute. For the gingerbread, the dough is rather thick, and because it's very cold coming out of the fridge, you do have to work with it a little bit to roll it out. But the most important thing with both of these recipes as you're rolling them out is to make sure you have a uniform thickness of the dough so that it bakes uniformly as well. If you have some that are real thin and some that are thick on the same tray, they're not going to cook as well. And both of these recipes, as you saw there with the gingerbread men, they do puff up a little. Now that they will flatten out a little as they cool, but while they're baking, they do puff up a little bit. So I realized I probably didn't need to go quite as thick with the gingerbread men as I did, but it's a learning process, learning as you go. But here with the sugar cookies, you use very cold butter. You take it out and you let it get to room temperature just enough to make an indentation in the stick of butter. If you can squeeze it and it leaves an indentation a little bit, then that's cool. That's warm enough. You really want them the butter to be kind of cool when you're making this dough, because that's what's going to help them bake properly. And something interesting about this particular recipe, you use salted butter, and also you add the baking powder here to your butter and sugar mix. You don't mix it in with the flour like you do in most recipes. The flour is added separately, a little at a time, until you get it mixed. Don't overmix with the flour, just enough to incorporate the flour into your dough. I use a sifter to flour my surface. That way I get just a very light coating. You don't want to get a lot of big clumps of flour added to your dough while you're rolling out. Do you like to make cookies that you roll out and cut into shapes? Let me know in the comments. What kind of cookies are your favorite? With our sugar cookies here, I made Christmas trees, snowmen, stars, snowflakes, and round circle cookies. For our party, I prepared all the icing in advance and put it into icing bags, and I prepared a green and a red for each of the kids so they could have their own to work with, and then several of the white as well, because I thought we might just pass the white around as depending on who was doing it. But you see here, you see the kids were so proud of their work. That's my little niece JoJo and my nephew Clayton, and I think these kids did a great job. It's not as easy as it looks, let me tell you. This is my niece Kenzie working on hers. She did a great job on her gingerbread man as well. I printed out multiple variations of iced cookies and set them around the table so that the kids could look at them for reference while they were decorating their cookies. And little Brinley did a good job too. Here's Kenzie still working away. She's going to get that snowflake just like the picture. And that's my beautiful granddaughter Brantley. I think my sister-in-law might have missed her calling because look at how great her cookies turned out. She did an excellent job. I made an outgoing mailbox, letters for Santa, and a Florida Snowman. I apologize, I lost the footage of the mailbox. This was actually a Dollar Tree mailbox that I painted white last year and stuck it in my stash and never got back to it. And then a cloche that I had. I decided to use that for my Florida Snowman because I had this little snowman kit that had come with some white modeling clay type that you could build your snowman, but the clay was white and it ended up getting very dirty and we ended up throwing it away, but I kept all the snowman pieces because I thought I could do something with them. And then I thought this is perfect. Using my Cricut, I printed out Florida Snowman, and if any of you are familiar with Florida weather, we don't get snow very often. It's extremely rare. It doesn't stay on the ground. And right now we're experiencing some summer temps. It's been in the high 80s this week. But for this, I just put the label on it, put all the pieces under the cloche, and that was it, my Florida Snowman. And like I said, for the mailbox, I did lose the footage on that, but I just printed out letters for Santa off of Cricut and attached it and then made a little letter to go inside. And next, I made an embellished garland, and I had a door frame going into the little hallway there off the kitchen and dining room, and I just wanted to dress it up a little. And I had these again in my stash. Remember, I am pulling everything out of my craft stash and using it up. And these I had actually picked up, I believe, at Dollar Tree, which was a really good deal. But it's kind of skimpy, as you can see here. So I had two of them. So I just twisted them together. And then once I had them twisted together, I folded it in half and twisted the two together again. Next, I took some of the red pitberry garland. Again, I had this, but they do sell it at Dollar Tree, and twisted it around the entire length of the garland. I just cut off the excess and then pinched the wire around the end for it to stay. Next, I took some red and white striped ribbon that I had and made 3 loop bows. And you see here I left this in so that you could really follow along. With this particular ribbon, it is the same on both sides, but I just flipped this around on itself. I believe I did 5 or 6 loops of it going around, and then found the middle, fold it in half to find your middle, and that's where you're going to put your notches. And I did use the zip ties to secure the bow, but then I used wire to attach it to the garland. And this first one I did, I also took a red ornament and wired it to the center of the bow. I didn't do that on the ends. I only had 1 red ornament left that I was, pulling things out of my stash. And I think I probably have some more somewhere. So maybe I'll find them next year and I can add them to the other ends of the garland, because I kind of like the way that looked with the red ball in the middle. But I used a wire tie to secure it, and I didn't pull it all the way tight because I wanted to make sure and get my tail in there. So I cut my tail, dovetailed the ends, and thread it through underneath the wire tie before cinching it tight. I did feed another zip tie through there to attach it to the garland. I forgot. I thought I had just used wire. But remember that cardinal rule to bow making: every good bow needs a good fluffing. So the bow with the ornament in the center is getting attached to the center of the garland. Next, I cut 6 pieces of ribbon. So I have 6 ornaments with the hanger and 6 pieces of ribbon. Now I thread the ornament hanger through the middle of the ribbon and attached a little dab of hot glue to secure it to keep the ribbon closed shut over the ornament hanger. I used the jumbo clip from Dollar Tree to mark the center of each half of the garland. So when I was attaching these ribbons, I knew where the center was and then to space out evenly on each side. So I did one to the center first on each side and then the outer ones. So there's 6 total going across, as you saw in the picture. Be careful when you're hot gluing ribbon because it does seep through the ribbon and it will burn you. So just do it a little gingerly till it starts to stick, and then you can apply some pressure. After hanging the ornaments, I attached the bow at each end of the garland, fluffed it up because those bows need a fluffing, and then hung it up. And that's it, my embellished garland. For my next craft, I made a Tier Tray Floral. Now this little flower pot I don't know if you remember back in my Christmas in July videos when I was doing some red painting during the summer, my little niece Jojo was helping me, and I think I had her painting that little pot for me. But I decided to pull it out and do something with it. Again, using my floral picks, I first put some floral foam into the little pot, centered my largest, fluffiest pick, and then just used greenery around to fill in a little bit around the sides. And then I took a couple of the little red ornaments that I had gotten at Dollar Tree and added them in the center there with some glue. But before I attached them, I did put little bows on them. Here I used a little piece of a Christmas tree branch that had fallen off our tree a year or two ago and just snipped off a couple of small pieces to fill in there on that foam. So I placed two of the ornaments into the greenery, and then you'll see me pointing, there was a little spot. I did stick a piece of greenery in that you see in the finished product. But there you have it, my Tier Tray Floral. I do have quite a snowman collection, so I decided to add a Pedestal Snowman to my collection this year. I had a couple of styrofoam balls, and they reminded me of a snowman, or certainly of snowballs. Also in my stash, I had this little, it used to have a tea light in it, but when you turned it upside down, it looked like a top hat, which I think is what it was supposed to look like. But I sprayed the styrofoam balls with my spray adhesive and then rolled them in my snow glitter. I was surprised, it adhered pretty well to the styrofoam. The little top hat had "Made in China" printed on, and I tried to get that off, but I couldn't get it off. But it didn't really matter because I decided to add this embellishment to the top of the hat, and it was going to cover it up. Next, I took a candlestick that I already had. I'd used it in a different craft, but I decided it was distressed looking, but I decided I wanted it white. So I used my Rust-Oleum chalk paint in linen white and went over the distressing, and it gave it a clean white finish. Of course, I used my handy dandy heat gun to speed up the drying process, and then I glued the styrofoam balls onto the top of the candle holder and the second ball on top of that. I was worried the hot glue might melt the styrofoam, but it didn't. I was happy to find out it didn't, but it did stick pretty well. I had to hold it for a while, but it did stick well. And the same thing with the hat. I was able to use hot glue to adhere the hat to the top styrofoam ball. I used a piece of red ribbon to make a scarf, and I used a button off of an old slipper that I painted orange for his nose. And I had little googly eyes that I used for his eyes. And that's it for my Pedestal Snowman. Well, you know what time it is now. It's time for an adult beverage. I'm going to have a whipped caramel Christmas cocktail. For this, I used Kahlua, whipped cream vodka, caramel syrup, and half and half. All the liquids go into the shaker with ice, and you'll shake it till it's well chilled. Once your glass is chilled, you squirt the caramel syrup into it, and that's really all there is to this cocktail. As always, the recipe will be in the description box. Please drink responsibly. Make it a safe and great holiday season. Have a very Merry Christmas and enjoy a whipped caramel Christmas cocktail.
Well, folks, that's it for another week. Thank you so much for sticking with me. I really do appreciate it. Don't forget to take time to stop and smell the coffee. Make it a great week, and I'll see you next Friday.